Okay. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're really excited to have you all here this afternoon for a really exciting lecture, audio sample session. My name is Andrew Marcus. I'm Director of Community Development here at Kehila, Kedosha, Ioannina Synagogue. If it's your first time here, welcome to the only Romaniot Greek Jewish synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. Thank you. We're an active synagogue and museum. The building you're sitting in right now was built in 1927, so we're almost 100 years old. We're a New York City landmark, and we're proud to maintain the traditions and customs of the Jews from Janina in northwestern Greece. We'll actually hear a little bit about some of their musicians in the talk today. So please join us throughout the year. We have services every Shabbat, Jewish holidays, but we also have a museum, like I said, with educational programs, lectures like these, film screenings, book presentations, cooking classes. So if you're not on our mailing list, get on our website, join our mailing list, or come talk to me afterwards. The most important thing, we have Pesach coming up in 2 weeks, so join us for services for that. But even more exciting, if I could say that, is our annual Greek Jewish Festival is coming up on Sunday, May 11th, which is our 10th year. We started it 10 years ago. Thank God it's grown. It's right here outside on Broome Street, outside of the synagogue. We have 4 different live bands playing a lot of the types of music you're going to hear about today. Dance performances, tons of traditional food, kids activities, vendors. It's a big block party. We get 10,000 people, and we'd love for you all to come out and celebrate with us that day. So we have postcards in the back. I also want to acknowledge a few special people here that help make that possible and also keep our community going. One is my father, Marvin Marcus, the president of the synagogue. He's the one on the camera right now and helps make everything happen behind the scenes. We have our community engagement fellow, Theo Cantor, who's waving his hand in the back. He's helping us reach out to our extended community, the next generation, and make sure people feel welcome and reconnected with their Romaniot heritage. We have our board member, Jesse Colchamiro, and many other volunteers that help make today possible, so thank you. But also, really excited that in our audience today, we have an amazing mix of our extended community members, musicians, researchers, just an incredible group, and I'm really excited because the turnout has been so positive, the response for this event with Ian today. And so I'm looking forward to all of your engagement and questions and sharing knowledge and history and research about the topic we're going to be talking about. So I don't think I missed anything else, but again, we're going to have refreshments afterwards. If you just came in, there are some seats here, so please, you don't have to stand. I see someone else coming in, so feel free to come around and squeeze in if you just arrived. But afterwards, like I said, we'll have refreshments. In addition to being a synagogue, on our second floor we have a museum. Right now it's a little bit under renovation, but normally we're open on Sundays. You can come for free tours to learn about the history of our community and the Jews of Greece. So after today, consider yourself part of our community, and we'd love to have you back. So with that, I'm really honored to introduce Ian Nagoski, who's our guest speaker and presenter today. Ian is an independent music researcher who's actually specialized in this type of Ottoman-era music and Jewish musicians for the past 20 years. I found out about him because he just curated an amazing new exhibit on this topic at the Jewish Museum of Maryland in Baltimore. And I saw literally 2 months ago on Facebook this incredible exhibit, interactive, physical records, music, photos, and I said, we have to get him here. And he was an amazing, he responded so positively, enthusiastically, so no place would be more appropriate for him to come and speak than here. He's done presentations all over the country and abroad, from Athens to all over the United States, even in Northern Europe as well, and we're really honored to have him share his knowledge and research with us today. One last thing I do want to mention is, like I said, the synagogue was built in 1927. Before that, when there were thousands of Sephardic and Romaniot families in this neighborhood, there were lots of Greek and Turkish Sephardic coffee houses in this part of the Lower East Side. And specifically on the site where you're sitting right now, there was a Sephardic coffee house called El Amanecer, which, because of the research of Devin Nahr and the records from the Ladino newspaper, we found an article announcing when this cafe opened in 1925 by a Mr. Arawesti from Monastir in North Macedonia. And then it was a gathering place to share music and ideas and updates from the community. And today we're honored to have you all here to reconnect with that same culture and music and traditions. And we have lots of other events in this room, including our monthly new series of Torah and Taverna Nights, which has live music and guest speakers, which you're all invited to in May. So you're in a historic space, we're talking about history, but we're all living it with our own heritage and traditions and music makers in the room. So without further ado, give it up for Ian Nagoski.
Hi everybody, my name is Ian Nagoski. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a music researcher, reissue record producer, and as Andrew said, I had recently been asked by the Jewish Museum of Maryland to make an exhibit. They have a new multimedia space, and they said, there's this guy, and he's got all these records, and maybe he wants to do something. And they asked me, and I immediately knew exactly what I would like to do. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about this afternoon. It's going to take about 80 minutes. I'm going to really try to stay concise and stay on script and not ramble on too much. It is a habit of mine. But the most important thing is that we're all crammed in here pretty good, right? So you all need to be comfortable. It's music. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. So please, get something to drink, step outside, whatever you need to do to be comfortable. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I've been doing this a long time. It's perfectly okay, all right? So, where to begin with this whole thing? Yes?
Are we allowed to dance in the aisles?
As far as I'm concerned, it's up to everybody else. You know, they'll let you know. For me, yes, fine. Or cry, or curl up in a ball, or whatever you need to do. Do that. Okay, so I'm just going to read to get us started. I'm sorry, I usually try to be extemporaneous, but this is a time-saving measure, I assure you. So, the discs that were the dominant commercial recording medium during the first half of the 20th century are composed of a mixture of shellac, the secretion of the lac beetle, carbon, and over 80% finely ground stone. They are literal rocks that remember the music and lives of people who are now gone. They remain monuments to the lives and art of the performers who made them. The practice of leaving stones on graves is a way of expressing the permanence of the meaning of the lives of the dead. The old stone 70 RPM discs are rarely revisited. But in listening to them again and surrounding them with context, we hope that the music can take root in the hearts of people living today. Experiencing them dignifies the musicians' contributions, expressions, and lives. Each spiral-inscribed disc they left behind can be a memorial to them, telling us that they were once here and an opportunity to contribute to the permanence of the memories of the musicians and their audiences. About 2/3 of the people who arrived during the largest per capita wave of immigration in America's history, 1880 to 1920, during which time, by the way, the percentage of foreign-born people in the United States was then between 13 and 14%.
Still.
To this, right now, as we have this terrible immigration problem, it's about 14%. And then in 1924, we closed the door. We closed the golden door. And it stayed closed until 1965. And now we're going exactly through what we went through 100 years ago with a wave of xenophobia. But of that wave of people who are arriving, 1,000 people a day just through Ellis Island for decades, not counting all the other ports of immigration, Baltimore, Boston, etc., Texas, Seattle, San Francisco. About 1/3 of those people were from what is southern Italy now. About 1/3 of them were from Eastern Europe. And about 1/3 of them were from a bunch of other places. I happened to get interested about 20 years ago in one of those other places, which was the collapsing Ottoman Empire. So I've been involved in learning about the lives of people who spoke Greek, Turkish, Arabic, Armenian, primarily for about 20 years. And so among them, there were a bunch of Jews. As you, this particular group of people, I am so grateful to be here. I found out about this place in 2009. So to be here now, talking to you is just such a heart-filling, just a beautiful experience. I'm very grateful for you having me. I'm very grateful for you coming. But I will begin the story proper in, of all places, Pekin, Illinois. where a guy was born, let's see, his name is Saul Bloom, born in 1870 in Pekin, Illinois. Poor Russian Jewish Orthodox family, attended one day of school in his whole life. He went into business for himself at the age of 10. By 16, he was wealthy. He was selling anything that he could make money on. Medicated window screens was one of his big things. You put a screen in the window and you open it at night and the wind blows through and it's coated with some medicine and he's selling you the idea of being healthy. Anyway, rich by 16. At 19 years old, he bought himself a ticket to go to Paris to see the World Expo there. And there, in Paris, 1889, he saw Algerian women dancing, and he said to himself, I'm going to make $1 million. This is going to blow America's mind. And so he quickly signs them up. This is one of them. She wound up coming 4 years later when he had been hired as the entertainment director for the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. He was making insane money, 22 years old, directing all of the music and all the entertainment. The big breakout hit of the entire exposition were the dancers. It was a huge deal. Belly dancing is introduced to America. La Belle Baya, who was Algerian, Jewish, Nazakazik, Jewish, let's see, I actually have here, stick to the script, Nagoski, come on, man. So yeah, dancers as an attraction was the brainstorm of the Midway's 23-year-old entertainment director, Saul Bloom. He was then making, 1893, $1,000 a week. Personally contributed a song for the dancers to dance to that he stole from a French song, which was stolen from an Algerian song. And everybody in the room knows it, because it goes... Became known as the streets of Cairo. It was a big hit in America. And there was a woman who danced to it, who called herself Little Egypt. Now that's a name that a lot of dancers used afterward, but it was in particular a Jewish woman who claimed to be the first Little Egypt. Now it so happens that at the fair, a ethnographic documentarian named Benjamin Ives Gilman, born 1852, died 1933, who earned a PhD at Hopkins, on the morning of September 25th, 1893, devoted most of his recordings to Fijian, Javanese, and Northwestern Indian performers who were there, but he recorded 11 cylinders, a total of 13 minutes of music, which you can hear at the Library of Congress at the Folklore Center, of the first recordings ever made in the United States in Turkish and Arabic. Among the performers on those are a woman named Mademoiselle Rosa, who I believe was also a Jewish woman from Thessaloniki. She performs tambourine on a few of the performances. So, but those aren't commercial records. Those are just things that circulate. The most famous dancer of the expo, Little Egypt, was somebody, she said it was Farida Mazar, who was born 1871 in Damascus, died 1937. She'd lived in Chicago before the fair, claimed to have been the original Lady Egypt, continued to dance publicly for decades afterward, marrying a Greek man named Saropoulos. Other dancers that we know who were Jewish for sure, Nazakazik of Beirut, who we just saw, Ralo Jameli, who we see here from Jerusalem, Matilda Akun, who was called La Belle Baya of Algeria, and then this Mademoiselle Rosa. Okay. Jump cut. There's another dancer who I was going to talk about. We didn't get the images loaded up into the computer, but decades later. So music and dance, they're one thing. We have two different words for them, but they're one thing. Ornette Coleman said there's only two ways of experiencing music, dancing and dancing in your head. I believe this. Anyway, now the world of dance tends to be a world of women and women researchers. The world of music and old records tends to be a world of men and male researchers. I would like to see this integrated a little bit better, but lacking images, I won't talk too much about a woman named Lila Berdekan, who was an interesting character toward the United States during the 1920s and 30s, representing herself as a Kurdish princess. The truth is that she was born 1903, Constantinople, Istanbul, to an Austrian Jewish mother, Henrietta Hornig, who was the women's dentist in the court of Sultan Abdul Hamid II. Her father was Abdulzarak Bedir Khan, born 1864, died 1918, a Kurd of noble lineage who had been an Ottoman diplomat to St. Petersburg and Tehran before taking a post in the Sublime Porte. Shortly after his daughter's birth, he was exiled for political reasons to Libya in 1906. She and her mother fled to Egypt, where her mother, Hornig, continued working among women in the courts of Alexandria and Cairo. They never saw their father again. Lila and her mother relocated to Vienna in 1918. She started dancing there in 1925 before completing her education in Montreux, Switzerland. Against her mother's wishes, she pursued a dance career in Paris, marketing herself without exception as a Kurdish princess, although she never set foot in the Middle East after her childhood. She toured the US 3 times, late 20s, early 30s, capitalizing on the image of herself as an emancipated Oriental woman who received death threats for her performances. After World War II, she gave up performing publicly, opened a dance school, died Paris, 1986. Okay, so in the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim majority, Muslim women didn't sing and dance in front of men. So the female singers and dancers that we have on these old records are all either Christians or Jews. So here, for instance, is Badria Sada, who we know practically nothing about except that she recorded at least 14 songs between about 1907 and 1912 in Beirut for the Vitaphone label, and was a Jewish girl. That's all we know. Okay, this is a marketing poster for Victor Records from 1924. Double-sided Victor discs it advertises. The largest year of immigration per capita in US history was 1907. It was exactly that year that both of the major record labels in the United States, Victor and Columbia, both got it in their heads. I wonder if we can make some money off of these people, these immigrants that are coming in. So they start marketing records to immigrants in the US, 1907, 1908, and they begin with the demographically largest groups of people in the US. So German speakers, Italian speakers, Scandinavians, and then they get around gradually to these smaller demographic groups, one at a time. So you get recordings of Greeks by 1909, 1910, recordings in Arabic, 1915, 1916, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, first ever recording of an African American woman, of a black woman commercially in the United States, 1920. Mamie Smith, Crazy Blues, March 1920. Changes the world. I mean, the 20s are full of black women, you know, incredibly important. Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, Trixie Smith, all these people. But black women get recorded last, after everyone else. There were Greek and Armenian stars by the end of the 19-teens. Anyway, so this is, there was a guy named Tetos Dimitriadis, who was born in 1900 in Istanbul, Constantinople. Greek guy, comes over in 1920, starts recording almost immediately for a little independent company up where the bus station is now, called Panhellenion Records. A woman named Kula Antonipoulou was a singer. Her husband was one of the guys who invented the idea of the Greek diner. And they made a lot of money.
That's essential.
Yeah, they made money. They bought not only recording equipment in the 19-teens, they bought pressing equipment. They pressed their own records by the 19-teens. Anyway, so independent company with a woman as a star, Madame Kula. Dimitriadis starts recording for them 1922-23, and then he starts recording for Victor Records, and then he gets hired by Victor to be the chief of all of their foreign language records. And they needed one, because neither Victor nor Columbia knew what a good record sounded like in anything other than English. They didn't know. They're recording these immigrants, but they have no idea if any of them can sing, if it's a good song. They know nothing. So they get Dimitriades. Dimitriades, good-looking guy, passable singer, made a lot of records, solid gold ears. The man could really hear a good record, no matter what language it was in, no matter what style, no matter what. He knew what a good record sounded like. So, here at the top of the thing, the Athenian songs. First person listed, Tetos Dimitriadis. Right below him is a woman named Marika Papagika. Papagika was born on Kos in 1890, was raised in Alexandria, Egypt, arrived with her husband, who was her cimbalom player, in 1915, settled on 42nd Street near 8th Avenue, 42nd? Right across now from where the New York Times building is. Immediately across there. And they had a coffee house called the Apollo Tea Room up on the second floor, which was among the first recreations of a Eastern Mediterranean coffee house. She was immensely popular. Made 250 recordings between 1918 and 1929. More about her later. But then we go down and we see there's the Kleftika and Dematica stuff, diverse things. Oh, and then there's the section for dances. Now, in the section for dances, where is he? Is he there? Oh, no, he's up a little bit. There's an I. It's Joseph Moskowitz. Anybody know Joseph Moskowitz? Joseph Moskowitz was a player, again, photo missing, but he was best known as a klezmer musician. Born 1879 in Galati, present-day southeastern Romania. His family included klezmer musicians. His father Moses played cimbalom. As a young man, he toured Hungary, Ukraine, Istanbul, building repertoire and skill on the instrument before immigrating with his wife Rebecca in December 1907, the peak of immigration. For 5 years, he toured the US, gathering still more repertoire, including ragtime songs. He recorded Hungarian songs, he recorded Argentinian songs, he recorded Greek songs, and Turkish songs.
Wow.
This is the Turkish section of the Greek music poster being advertised. So we have here Ibrahim Efendi, who's Avram Levy from Aleppo, Syria. Joseph Moskowitz, and then Karakim Prudian, the Armenian oud player, and Kemeny Minas, the great Armenian violinist and singer, who I love. But I'll play you a little bit of the Moskowitz record, because it's a medley, and, oh dear, technical issues. It begins with a song that some people will know. Let's get dark. So Izgadara is one of the big shared songs of the entire Eastern Mediterranean. There's a movie, a friend of mine, Bob Gottfried, gave me a copy of this movie. Whose song is this? Has anybody seen this thing? Yeah. All the ethnomusicology nerds have seen it. And it's a woman goes around all over the Eastern Mediterranean and talks to Bulgarians and Romanians and Greeks and Turks, and everybody says it's their song. Right. Now, what winds up happening is in the early 1950s, the US government sends over an envoy of American entertainers, including Catherine Dunham's dance troupe. And one of the members of Catherine Dunham's dance troupe is a young woman named Eartha Kitt, who hears Uzgadara, comes back and records it, and has a #1 hit in the United States in 1952 with that melody. Okay. Now, the records that were being sold in the United States to the immigrants were initially recordings made back home. that were imported and sold to the immigrants to see, like, will they buy record players? Will they buy the furniture, the machine that plays the software, the record? And they did. So then they started recording the immigrants themselves. And I gotta say, record marketing guys, they thought that they should record the most aspiring and middle class kind of singers that they could find, which turned out to be the wrong strategy entirely. The people who were coming over were poor, peasants, from like rural areas and stuff. What they wanted was funky down-home music. But there were still people who would pay real money to have physical discs shipped over from the various homelands. So one of the Arab musicians who was very popular in the US, that got a lot of records shipped over by him, was a guy named Zaki Morad. Zaki Morad was Jewish from Aleppo. His family were textile folks. He went to Cairo and got involved in the scene of the most elevated classical singers. He was a very, very good singer, and particularly hung around with a guy named Abdulhai Hilmi. Abdulhai Hilmi was this self-indulgent, alcoholic, bisexual cocaine addict who was a spectacular singer. Died young after a feast of turtle soup and cocaine one night. Yeah, wonderful. Anyway, he and Zaki Morad picked up his style, and he sold tons of records in Egypt, in Lebanon, and in the US. And he came and toured the United States in 1924 and recorded for the Maksud Company down on Washington Street in what was then Little Syria. There were two Arabic language record companies in Washington Street in Lower Manhattan, Alexander Malouf's label and A.J. Maksud's label. The Maksuds were the silk manufacturer. They made lingerie. They made silky 90s. Into the 1950s and 60s, you see women's magazines selling Maksud lingerie. Anyway, the youngest of the 8 sons was A.J. Maksud, who, well, they had money and he had time on his hands, so he ran a record label, and they're great records. So, some touring musicians recorded for them, including Morad, who recorded, for instance, Zaruni, Visit Me Once a Year, a famous song by Saeed Darwish, who wrote the Egyptian national anthem. Darwish was a huge supporter of Zaki Murad's, put him in lots of plays and stuff. Anyway, Zaki Morad had a couple of brothers who were textile merchant guys going back and forth across the Mexican Texas border. And they wound up coming here, settling in Brooklyn. This is Meyer Morad, Zaki's brother, who settled in Brooklyn. Next to him is this tall, beautiful man with his head cocked in the violin. He's one of the greatest musicians America ever had, ever of any kind. His name is Naim Karakand. He was born in Aleppo in 1890, was buried in Brooklyn, started recording in 1912 in the United States, and his last recordings were made in 1958 with Ahmad Abdul Malik, who was then Thelonious Monk's bass player. Long career, fascinating person. I could literally talk for an hour and a half just about Naim Karakand. But I don't have to. Because that's Naim Karakand. This is in the late teens from a Columbia Records Turkish catalog. This band performed on every Arabic language record, every. 85, 90% of the Arabic language recordings made in the United States between 1915 and 1925 were made by some variation of this band. Naim Karakand, Catholic from Aleppo. Abraham Halabi, Jewish from Aleppo. And Shahadi Ashir, Jewish from Aleppo. The Arabic language records in the United States are mostly accompanied by Jews. This is a record label from during World War I by that band. It just says Syrian Arabic Instrumental Trio. Same band. Columbia Records made a few of these special labels for charity relief efforts. You know that Lebanon had the highest mortality rate per capita of anywhere on earth during World War I. Half of the population starved to death. Do you know the story? Do you know why? So what wound up happening was that Lebanon went all in on silk production, and they didn't grow any food. So when the war came and the blockades, everybody just starved to death. And all of the people from Mount Lebanon, which is a lot of the Syrian immigrants who came to the United States, you know, they just knew there was, not only did you lose your family, there's no home to go back to. So Shahadi Ashir. This is from the Sephardic Heritage Foundation. I was very grateful that they allowed us permission to use this image. Shahadi Ashir, the kanun player, sits at the far right. His younger brother is right here. His younger brother, Moses, was born a decade later in Aleppo, studied there under a prolific composer of Pizmonim, moved to Brooklyn in July 1912, where he was a successful rabbi and singer. Shahadi then joined his brother's family in Brooklyn in February 1914. By the following year, he and Karakan started their band, along with the Aleppo Udist Abraham Halabi. Halabi then drops out, and another Jewish Udist from Aleppo named Tufik Mubayid joins the band. So yeah, they recorded from March 1915 onward. And over the next decade, they made scores of records accompanying Arabic language singers, Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. The first ever recording of a Christian, a Jew, and a Muslim together on a record, made in Manhattan for the Maksud label, 1923-24. The singer was named Assad Dekru. So, America. They're all bound together by language and culture. Yeah, so, and this is one of the people that they accompanied. This is a guy named Moses Cohen. This is the only photograph we have of him, his 1919 passport. Moses Araktingi Cohen, born sometime 1892-93 in Aleppo. His elder brother Eli was born 1882. He was a jeweler, immigrated in 1904. Moses and his 5 siblings and their widowed mother, Molly Abadi Cohen, born in Aleppo in 1862, then joined Eli in 1908 here. Moses initially worked with his brother in the jewelry business before going into business himself, trading in lace curtains with a storefront at 121 Canal Street. While living at a series of addresses here on the Lower East Side, he recorded 3 discs for Columbia at the Woolworth Building on Broadway, down by City Hall. That's where Columbia Records Studios were, and where a lot of this productivity came from. With the accompaniment of Karakan and Ashir, October 1916, and then January 1917, before spending 2 years on business in Mexico City. After returning to New York, he cut 2 more discs for Victor in June and July 1921. So this recording is from June 10th, 1921. Appears to be the only one that doesn't have Shahadi Ashir on it. It's just Karakan and I believe Abraham Halabi accompanying. The title is Wana Mali in Arabic. The translation, oh, I forgot to play you any Shahadi Ashir. We should listen to that. I beg your pardon. So, Shahadi Ashir, the kanun player, only made one side of one record, performing just by himself. Here he is playing a taksim in Hijazkar. All right. So then I'll play you a little bit of, this is side one of a two-sided thing called Guatemala by this fellow Moses Cohen, who made about 8 records or so in the teens and early 20s. Guatemala is translated on the label of the disc as "What is Wrong with Me?" You know the feeling? He, and I don't know. I only read and speak English. I'm from Delaware. Yeah. And I dropped out of high school with a D- in English after the 10th grade. True. And so this is who I really came to talk to you about. Amalia. So the only Romagnot person to have ever recorded in the first half of the 20th century was this woman. Mazel Tov Matzah. She was born sometime between 1894 and 1897 in Janina. Family included hereditary funerary singers. You know, this thing that women are employed to lament at funerals. She had that in her background. The researcher David Safa, out in California, did this incredible research job on Amalia. There's a CD that's out called In Foreign Lands Since I Was Young, released in the 1990s on our Hooli Records. I think there are copies for sale here, you said? Yeah. Upstairs? Maybe, yes, maybe no. Anyway, David did great work. I have really tried to improve on David's work and have found it very, very difficult. He's a wonderful guy and has been very generous in sharing a lot of his knowledge. So credit to him. So she was sent to the United States as a teenager in 1912 and as a part of an arranged marriage to a guy named Jack Soretta, who was born 1892 in Janina. They had at least 2 daughters. The younger one, Esther, the older one was Diamantu, who was born in 1915. And then there might have been another child who died, I think, in between, not sure. And then there was one named Esther, who was born in 1924, Thessaloniki. They lived initially at 102 113th Street, and Amalia, different from what would have happened at home, worked sewing in a factory. Back home, women weren't working, but she was working. It was a different life than what was normal for women back home. Her husband was a peddler, He was a pushcart peddler guy, right? 1924, when Esther is born, she also starts recording. The thing is that I believe that by that time they were living here on Broome Street. I'm not sure. I went looking. I had this memory that they were, and then I couldn't find a record for sure, but I think they're living basically within a block or two of here.
I think it might have been across the street.
I think it was across the street. That's right. That's what I remember, but I couldn't find the evidence for it, so I don't want to say for sure because I know it matters, right? So anyway, so by that time, 24, when she starts recording, she's getting up and singing and dancing in public at coffee houses in the neighborhood. And her husband goes, absolutely not. No wife of mine. I mean, okay, look. There are 9 Greek men for every 1 Greek woman in the United States in the 1920s. Now, a woman who gets up and sings and dances in that period, generally, assumptions are made about what else she'll do. So my wife is not getting up and singing and dancing in front of people, absolutely not. And they fight about it, and they fight about it, and they break up. He leaves her. He takes Esther and sends Esther away to live with family. Kidnaps is the word that Diamond used in later years to describe what happened. So they break up. Terrible thing. But Amelia Hanum, she is here, on the MG Parsekian label out of West Hoboken. Parsekian was an Armenian guy, obviously, Mugardish George Parsekian. He was the person responsible for the first recordings in the Turkish language for Columbia Records in 1912. He was an impresario, and he bought record pressing equipment and opened up a record pressing plant and released records in Turkish, Greek, and Armenian during the early 1920s. She's accompanied here by a couple of Armenian guys, excellent players, Harry Hezekian and Edward Bashian. I just want to play you a little bit of some of this record here. It'll just take me a second to get there, gosh darn it. Yeah, Crane, where are you coming from are the lyrics in Turkish. Whoops, I beg your pardon. Oh gosh darn it. What have I done? I'm going to play you one of her sides all the way through. Just a second. So, Amalia, we know from David Soffa's research, was like best friends with Marika Papagika, who I said earlier was the most famous, important Greek singer in the United States during the 1920s. Amalia used to babysit Diamond when Marika would babysit Diamond when Amalia was out in the clubs at night. There is a photo. There it is. Oh, this is my favorite. I was visiting Richard Hagopian, the great repository of musical knowledge, Armenian in Fresno. We gave a talk about a book I'd written out there, and he invited us to lunch on his vineyard. Made us tamales, showed me the right size. It's when it's the palm of your hand, that's the size to pick the grape leaf to make it. And wonderful guy. He's in his 90s now, huge repository of music. We're in his music room. I'm looking at his records. I look up. There's this 18 by 20 photograph up on his wall. And I go, wow, look at that. New York, middle of the 1920s. On the left, Kanuni Garbus, his teacher, who he got the photograph from. On the right, Marco Melkon Alamsharian, oud player, played for decades and decades. And I look in the middle and I go, I know who that is. I know who that is. Who is it? Who is it? And he goes, that's Amalia. And then he goes, Poulos' girl. You don't know about Achilles Poulos, do you? Achilles Poulos made 125 recordings in the United States between 1925 and 1929, including the single greatest Turkish language hit record that the United States ever had, Nedim Gedim Amerikaya, Why I Came to America. It sold to every Turkish-speaking household in the United States. 12-inch disc, 1926, and it's all about ambivalence, about immigrating. It's, oh cruel, why do you aggrieve us? I wish I never came, never saw. And so he drops out music completely. 1929, the story went for years and years that he got ratted out to immigration services for having made an anti-American record during this period of xenophobia. And that story turns out to be wrong. He didn't. He moved to Connecticut. Went to work for a coffee roaster. Every story about Poulos includes a lot of this. Big drinker. Maybe got arthritis, something happened. Anyway, he stopped playing music. He's buried in Connecticut, died in 1973. Now, he was married when this hot gossip that Hagopian passed. I don't know if it's true, by the way. Don't sue me for slander here. But she and Poulos, maybe, I don't know, who knows? Who knows, right? But this photo, and he and his son were very gracious to make a copy of this. So there they are in the middle of the 1920s. Then, about 1927, Marika introduces Amalia to Tetos Demetriades, to Victor Records. She makes a series of records for Victor, by which time she is remarried to a guy named Gus Bacchus, who is Greek, and she converts, nominally, to Greek Orthodoxy. Although David Safa said that according to her daughter, Diamond, she added that to her identity and never stopped being Jewish. And it was never an issue with any of her contemporaries that she was Jewish. It was never a thing. It was never brought up. She's one of us. So, I'm going to play you a record that she made in... oh, by the way, about her and Papagika, I also want to point out that there's a photo missing here that you can see online. I made an album with Marika called What Makes You Happy. There's a photo from the first annual ball of the AHPA, the American Hellenic Educational Association, at the Commodore Hotel, January 1920. Down front, it's one of these photos of just like a crowd of people. Down in front, there's a woman wearing a white dress with a tiara with a bouquet of flowers. Next to her is a guy with a little Charlie Chaplin mustache, and a big tall guy next to her. And because somebody found photos of Marika Papagika's husband, I knew that's who the guy with the mustache was. And because I'd read the immigration documentation for her cellist, Marcos Sifnios, I knew that he was 6'3", and that's who that is. And that's Marika down front with the tiara on, and next to her is the girl with the withered arm, the deformity, who is Amalia. There she is, right up front, with a tiara and a bouquet at the first meeting of this Greek association here in 1920 New York City. So they stayed friends for a very long time. Marika retired basically to Long Island in 1930, but we know that Amalia and Marika played together in Detroit in 1941, 2 years before Marika died at the age of 53. So this is a record that Amalia made. I'm going to play the whole thing all the way through. It's about 3.5, maybe 4 minutes. I'm very fond of this particular one that she made for Victor in 1927. Shows off what she can do. She's not the greatest singer in the world, but when she's good, boy, she's really good. So, it's an improvisation in Saba. So the accompanists there was a cembalo player named Louis Rossius, and the violin player was a guy named Nishan Sadefshian, who was a diamond setter at the Tajian Brothers Jewelry and Watch Repair store on 3rd Avenue at about 21st Street in what was then Little Armenia. That store also happened to be the location of a record label called Pharos Records in the late 20s. For a brief period around 1930, Amalia opened her own little cafe at 466 8th Avenue, around the corner from Marika's Apollo Tea Room. Molly and Diamond lived with Gus Bacchus at an apartment at 4 East 110th Street. But according to Diamond, Gus Bacchus was cruel to her. They divorced in 1935. She spent most of the Depression touring around the emerging Oriental nightclubs on 8th Avenue, as well as Detroit, Gary, Indiana, Philadelphia, the Catskills, the yogurt belt of the Catskills, often with the Greek singer-songwriter George Katsaros, born 1898 in Thessaloniki. Very interesting guy who was a drinker, dope smoker, gambler, cohort of tough modern women. Amalia similarly was a denizen of the nightlife, with predilections for swearing and gambling, who, despite a deformity of one arm, built flirting into her stage act. She and her daughter, Diamond, actually were a duo together, and there was a whole part of the act that was about, you know, hey boys, which one do you want more, the mother or the daughter? Yeah, here they are in New York City back in the early 1950s. There's Amalia and Diamond together. Now, the bouzouki player on the far right there is a guy named Poporakis, Nick Poporakis, who was a merchant marine who jumped ship in Newport News, Virginia, hitchhiked or caught a train or something up to Baltimore. His sister was married to an Italian who owned a grocery store there. They gave him a little money. He brought with a bouzouki that he bought on Crete. He was at the time one of less than 10 people in the United States who played that instrument. So he immediately hooks up with musicians here in New York. They start a record label, Kalos Discos, and yeah, he winds up performing with a bunch of people and making lots of records. I talked to him. He's still at 90-something years old before he died about 5 years ago or so. He still didn't really speak very much English. He really preferred to speak Greek. His wife, Leah Dacus, his widow, gave me this photo and this one. There's Diamond. There's Rose Ashkenazi. There's Poporakis on the far right. This is here in New York City in 1952. So, Some of you already know about Sarah Ashkenazi was her name when she was born, Constantinople, Istanbul, somewhere in the 1880s or 1890s. She lied relentlessly about her age, as women in showbiz do, right? It's part of the job. Her father owned a storage facility, but the family, her father and mother Flora and 3 siblings, moved to Thessaloniki, where her father worked as a money changer. She attended school, learned Greek in Salonika, was exposed to professional dancers whom she admired intensely. When her mother discovered that Sarah had danced on the stage at the Grand Hotel, she was beaten. She left the family and began dancing with an Armenian troupe in theaters and taverns in Piraeus, singing in Greek, Turkish, and Armenian. She took the name Rosa. In the 20s, she was discovered by the composer and impresario Panagiotis Tounadis, who arranged her first recording session September 1929. During the 30s, she was one of the 3 biggest stars in all of Greek music. Her, Rita Abatsi, Sofia Vendel. There just aren't more records by any other women in Greek during the 1930s. Huge, huge star. Lots and lots of her records released, by the way, in the United States. When the stock market crash happens, the record companies in the United States realized they didn't know what they were doing, trying to sell music to immigrants. They stopped recording immigrants for the most part, particularly smaller language groups like Armenian and Arabic, and just started importing material recorded in the homeland to sell to the immigrants, right? Fill the market gap. Her records sold like hotcakes in the United States to Greek speakers. She married an actor in the 30s, but his drinking led to his premature death while she was pregnant with their son. During the German occupation of Greece in 1941-44, over 80%, at 90% of Greece's Jewish population was killed. 60,000 people. Rosa, who was then running a restaurant in Athens, narrowly survived, partially thanks to her immense popularity. She says to have risked her life to save others during the Holocaust. Ongoing hardship and widespread famine continued through the British occupation that followed. After the war, Rosa met her next partner, Christos Philopoulos, began to rebuild her career and advocated for the singing of others, including Marika Ninu and the Sephardic woman from Thessaloniki, Stella Haskil, born 1918, died 1954. In 1951, she recorded a group of songs in Istanbul that were released only in the United States. More on that in a second. And then, after making those records for this company called Balkan Records. Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you that story now. Why not? Balkan Records, we were just talking about, was a record label here on the Lower East Side on Rivington Street.
42.
There you go. It was run by a guy named Ajin Aslan. Aslan was born March 12, 1895. At the age of 30, on July 12, 1925, he married a girl named, well, I'm not going to try and say it, again, from Delaware, sorry. She was 1 month shy of her 16th birthday. He arrived in New York by himself less than a year later, 1926, filed his declaration of intent to become an American citizen in 1928 as a resident of Detroit, gave up and gave his occupation then as musician. His wife joined him here in New York City, July 1931. Aslan made his first recordings in November 1931 as a clarinetist on 4 songs, issued as 12-inch discs by Columbia, sung in Albanian. He was born in Leskovic, Albania. And then made a bunch of other records with Albanians and Bulgarians, including a violinist named Nick Donev, born 1891 in Dichin, Bulgaria. In the late 30s, he launched his own record label called Mere, which is Albanian for with new. Mere Record, with new record, it was called. It ran about 6 titles and then folded. Little independent company couldn't make it. Then he gets Donev and another guy, a Greek guy named John Giornos, this accordion player, to pitch in some money, and they restart Mere, rename it Balkan Records around 1941. Giornos leaves the company in a big huff over some money problems. It was always a catastrophe with money with Aslan. I don't understand. But he put out hundreds and hundreds of records. More on this later. Among them, he had a brother back home in Tirana named Selim. And they corresponded back and forth. And Celine recorded a bunch of stuff in Tirana, and then in Athens, and then in Istanbul, including recordings of Rose Ashkenazi in Istanbul in 1951 that were released here in the United States and never released back home. And also Sukur Tunar, the great clarinetist, Uri Hrant, records put out here on the Lower East Side for the immigrants, never released back home, right? Aslan's legacy is lasting and very important, like Tetos Dimitriadis. So, where do we go from here? Right. She comes to New York for a 6-month residency at the Parthenon Cafe on West 27th Street. She and her accompanist, and they record actually for Colors Discos for Nick Poporakis' label. Yeah, and they, this is on Balkan Records. This is on Ajin Aslan's label out of Rivington Street. Let me see, I must have here in front of me the, there were 2 different addresses, but I'm not going to bother with that. You don't care. Do you? Kind of. All right, maybe I can find it while we listen to something. This is her recording in Istanbul in 1951 of the great lament Hürriye Karanlık, which means darkness pervades everywhere. If you thought the last one was a bummer, just you wait. It's a wonderful song. It was written in the 19th century by an Ottoman diplomat. Oh, darn it. Here's another thing I didn't play for you. Here's just a little bit more of Amalia. Sorry. But this is an old folk song from the 19th century called Ali Pasha. Ali Pasha was a historical figure who was the governor, the Albanian governor of Ioannina. So it's a song that she knew from home and brought with her and recorded for Ajin Aslan's label in the 1940s. Okay, another one. Hürriye Karanlık, recorded in Istanbul, 1951 by Rose Ashkenazi. Written by an Ottoman diplomat when he was traveling, when he got the news that his wife has died, and that nothing was worth doing anymore. By the way, Aslan initially lived at 143 Norfolk Street and then moved to 42 Rivington, which is where he opened the Balkan store. So, okay. This is Jacob Mayesh, born July 7th, 1899. Kuzatsi, Skalanova on the coast of Turkey, about 60 miles south of Smyrna, Izmir. Immigrated alone through Ellis Island, June 1920, at which time he had an uncle on the Lower East Side at 21 Rivington. His younger brother David joined him less than a year later. In 1924, he married Flora Salmoni, born 1904 in Kos, and they had their first two children, Joseph and Esther, here in Manhattan. By the time their son Meyer was born in 1930, they had already moved to Los Angeles, where Solomon and Jewel arrived, their next two children. He started a flower wholesale business, which is still in business. A friend of mine in LA told me, oh yeah, I just saw a Maya's truck drive by. March 18th, 1941, 8 months before Pearl Harbor, he files his declaration of intent to become an American citizen. And right about that same time, he begins recording at the first independent recording studio in Los Angeles, the first place where you can pay money, go in, make your own record, and come out with a record. What he recorded were his own compositions in Ladino and/or translations of Turkish songs to Ladino. He also published a little booklet of the lyrics to the songs that he released himself. Joel Bresler, up in Massachusetts, runs sephardicmusic.org. Huge resource, great help. This image comes from him. He got it from the family. They are still interested in the legacy, the Mayesh family, Jack Jr., and I've forgotten the grandson's name now. But yeah, I just want to play you one side of one of Jack's records. So this is I Bear With Patience. Los Angeles, 1942. 1948, after having made these 9 self-released records in Los Angeles, he comes out to New York City and he records 3 more discs for Ajan Aslan's label. Among his discs were recordings of a song that Tetos Dimitriades had first recorded in 1927 called Miserlou. Miserlou was a song written by a Greek guy here in New York named Louis Rasius. And you, I guess, probably know the song. It's been covered a million times by a lot of people and is now, I guess, widely best known as the theme song to the movie Pulp Fiction, done by Dick Dale and the Deltones. It became a surf guitar classic. But that was a song that Dimitriades decided was a hit record, and he pushed it year after year after year. First cut it 1927, he cut it again 1932. He published this sheet music with a Swedish accordion player on the cover in 1941. Yeah, he made it a thing. And Jack Mayesh made a Ladino translation of it in 1948. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you'll notice that the records that Ajan Aslan puts out, all these labels, Balkan, Metropolitan, Colophone. Colophone is actually run by the violin player Nick Doneff. More about him in a minute. Red label, black print, Albanian national colors. That's why. Anyway, so there are only 2 artists that he releases records in Spanish by. Jack Mayesh is one. The other is Victoria Hazan. Victoria Nino was born 1896. Salihi, Turkey. Family, 2 siblings, parents, Moishe and Rivka. Moved to Smyrna, Izmir when she was 15, and then in 1918 she married a guy named Israel Fred Hazan. That's their engagement photo, thanks to Joel Bresler. He was born in Smyrna. They moved together to New York City the fall of 1920. Become American citizens around 1922, just after, and actually, yeah, they filed their declaration of intent to become American citizens September 30th, 1922. The Smyrna catastrophe, where half the city burned, tens of thousands of people died, was September 13th to 22nd, 1922. So it was literally as soon as they got the news that Smyrna had burned down that they decided to become American citizens. Shortly thereafter, they actually went home to see what and who was left. 1928. 1924, she went alone to go see what was left of home. Then they went to 1928 to Buenos Aires or Montevideo, presumably to visit relatives. She sang and played oud in her Sephardic synagogue in the Bronx. When it was initially suggested in the 1920s, when Amalia and Marika and all these other women were recording for Victor in Colombia, somebody asked, the story goes, somebody asked Victoria Hazan whether she would also like to record, because she's a very good singer. Her response, the story goes, was, "Why? My husband makes a good living." That's the story. So, and then she's reapproached in the early 40s by Ajan Aslan, by Marco Melkon, the oud player. Do you want to record? And she makes a bunch of records in Turkish and a few in Ladino with Marco Melkon. I'll play you one of the Ladino ones now. This is Mis Pensarios Mi Trusharan. Sorry, like I said, Spanish. My thoughts have tricked me. Early 1940s. And by the way, like Jack Mayesh, I believe she's responsible for all these lyrics herself. These are lyrics that she did a lot of composing and translating for. There is one of the Ladino songs is the Canto Victoria, the Victoria song, or Victory song, 1941 or 42, in which she specifically names Hitler and hopes for vengeance against him. So this is from right around the same recording sessions. Yes? Yeah, El Cante de lo Victoria. Yeah, that's the one. Those are hen's teeth, by the way. These Ladino records, tough to find. If you know anybody, we're always looking for them. Don't throw them away, whatever you do, my God. We'll talk. told you I talk too much. I do. There are two more stories I want to tell you as quick as I can. One is about this guy, Louis Madelon, who also recorded for the same record company about the same time. Oh, before I do that, God, I'm jumping ahead of myself, disorganized. Victoria. After her first husband died in 1958, she remarried Joe Rosa. She continued singing within her community until she died at the Sephardic Home for the Aged in Brooklyn, November 21st, 1995. She's buried near family in Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, now we can move along to Louis Madelon. Louis Madelon began recording in 1926 with a group called the Istanbul Quartet. They made 26 songs for both Victor and Columbia between February and May 1926, notably including 4 songs in Spanish Hebrew, in Ladino, the first recordings made in the United States in Ladino, as a matter of fact. The band consisted of the violinist Maurice Morris Gannon, who was born in Smyrna, 1896, Madelon, who was born in Salona, Thessaloniki, also 1896, and either Moise Casas or Isaac Jacob Angel, born Salonika, Thessaloniki, 1891, on Kanun. Lead vocals were split among Angel and Casas in Turkish and Ladino, Madelon in Turkish. Angel self-released 4 discs, all in Ladino, about late 1923. Of them, only Madelon appears to have continued performing for the next several decades. This photograph was made December 1942 by the photojournalist Marjorie Collins, capturing a series of images at 160 Allen Street at the Oriental restaurant owned by Joe Levy. Collins was working for Roy Stryker's team of photographers, which included Dorothea Lange and Walker Evans at the U.S. Department of War Information. The OWI's photographers' mission was to present a multicultural American melting pot of hyphenated Americans as propaganda to support the moral imperative of saving lives in Europe by joining the Allies against Germany, despite criticism from the Axis powers of the US's abysmal treatment of black people, for instance. So, in order to have the moral high ground, we had to show that America's a melting pot that includes this diverse array of stuff. Marjorie Collins was a photographer, documentarian, going around taking pictures. So one night, December 1942, she staggers into this Sephardic restaurant around the corner from here, and we see here, it's Louis Madelon. And somebody who never made a record. It's a Lebanese woman from Massachusetts named Evelyn Maroon. And there's Joe Levy, the owner of the restaurant. Right? There's Evelyn dancing with these guys. The violinist is Nick Doneff, who co-owns the record label with Ajin Aslan. Are either of these other dancers Ajin Aslan? I have no idea. Who are these guys? This guy turns up in a photo on Mott Street taken by Andreas Fenninger right around the same time. He was a guy around the neighborhood who was hanging out outside the Bosphorus Cafe, it was called. I don't know who he is. He looks, a friend of mine, a researcher into Greek, what's called Rebettica, the kind of like criminal music. He goes, oh, he's a Greek gangster. I have no idea. He pulled that out of the air. I have no idea if that's true or not. But anyway, there they are. So, this is a poster for an upcoming concert the next month in January. Did I zoom in and look up every single person on it? Why, yes, I did. So, Ian, who is going to play at this concert? Let's see here. Oh, I'll find it for you in a sec. Gosh, darn it. Okay, well, I'm going to play you a track by Louis Madelon, but in order to play you that track, I first have to play you another one. Okay, so when we looked at the Greek poster at the beginning, the 1924 advertisement, there were records by Ibrahim Effendi, who I said was named Avram Levy and was from Aleppo, Syria, right? So one of the records that Victor imported that was made in Constantinople, Istanbul in 1909 was this one. This is a folk song called Konyali.
Hani ya da benim sırma saklı sevdiğim aldı getiriyor yüreğim yar yar Konyalım yürü, yürü malım yürü Aslan yarim yürü Konyalı'nın biri aldı gitti yani Aldattılar bizi, vermediler kızı Ey yanlarında duruyor dizlerimin izi
And then 25 years later, here's Louis Madelon. You were wondering who the performers at the Oriental Concert Entertainment and Dance and Carnival organized by the Armenian communist Zaven Yapachian were? Well, I just want to fill you in. 1942, the performers included Armenians, including the tar player George Shabaronian, singer Sugar Mary Vartanian, and Greeks, including my favorite, Virginia Magidou, and our girl, Amalia. So, that's all who's on that poster there. Okay, last story. This is a story about a guy who made it into the U.S. Despite the restrictions. His name is Herschel Obadiah. Born in the Betaween section of Baghdad in the mid-1920s, he arrived in New York February 1947 during the middle of the quota system era that restricted immigration. He was carrying a student visa to learn music composition at the University of California, Berkeley, under Ernest Bloch and Roger Sessions. So he gets a bachelor's degree in 1951 in 12-tone Dodecanese modernist composition, right? Then he relocates to New York City, where he files his petition to naturalize as an American citizen. Then he flies to Tel Aviv in 1956 to visit his family, who all got driven out of Iraq. And comes back to New York, doesn't stay in Israel, decides to stay in America, and join, well, right after he gets back to America, he's one of the accompanists, along with Naim Karakand, of all of the major players of the Arab scene on Atlantic Avenue. He just fits right in there. The Rashid store, and he's doing A&R. He's one of the people responsible for bringing over Mohammed al-Bakr, who you see these gaudy belly dance records in bargain bins all the time, from Egypt.
Port Said? Was that?
Yeah, Port Said's one of those records, and then Port Said is also a club on 8th Avenue that you're thinking of too, which, by the way, there's very good footage of, with Nick Doneff playing violin in a movie called Dark Odyssey, a B-movie by Radley Metzger, who directed all that soft porn in the 60s. Anyway, playing at Port Said with a dancer, Nick Doneff. Anyway, so yeah, Port Said does those terrible audio fidelity, gaudy things. Mohammed al-Bakr, Naim Karakand, Haki Obadiah, right? So he gets a name for himself pretty quick. Here's the who's who of the Arab scene in Brooklyn. There he is, right? He advertises in the Caravan newspaper constantly. He's available. If you want to hire him, go ahead. So this is 1956 we're up to at this point. 1959, living in Jackson Heights, Queens, hustling for gigs. Then he gets a gig. He records a couple of records. One is a guy named Jamal Aslan, who, photo missing, But Jamal Aslan, the record is called Lebanon, Her Heart, Her Something, Her Sounds. He's not Lebanese at all, he's from Aleppo. He's an oud player, he's very ambitious, and he hires this incredible group of musicians to make this huge sounding record, and they're all Brooklyn guys. And it's Haki Obadia, and it's Naim Karakand, and it's Ahmed Abdul Malik, the bass player, who also appear on all the Mohammed El Bakr records. So pick those up out of the dollar bin. They're not great listening all the way through, but the people on it are really good. And Haki Obadia joins up with Eddie the Sheik Kochak, and they become a duo for decades and decades and decades, and they make these fun belly dance records. And they do a bunch of novelty stuff, the Charanga Twist, No Shish Kebab on Sunday, 1962-63. He published an English language oud instruction book, spent summer of 1964 accompanying the Jamal twins, who were in fact the daughters of Ashkenazi Jews who'd settled in Egypt in the 20s, and then spent the 50s through the 70s touring America because the Egyptian police had become suspicious that they were involved in espionage, making it impossible for them to return to Egypt. So they knock out the string of like kind of corny belly dance LPs, and then 1969, Haki Obadia makes his one solo record. It's a masterpiece. If you see this record, coalesces his skills as a performer, arranger, scholar of Middle Eastern classical music. Obadia played all of the instruments himself, building the recordings through multi-track overdubbing, released on the Atlantic Avenue Brooklyn-based label run by the Rashid brothers, Raymond and Stan, with whom Obadia had been working as a producer since the 50s. Let me just play you one track from this, and that'll be our last thing for the night, with all my thanks. This is a solo taksim by the Iraqi-American performer Haki Obadia on Makan Rast, playing viola solo. In the 70s and 80s, Obadia performed regularly with Arab, Armenian, and Greek musicians. In the early 80s, he took a position teaching music at the Ward Millville High School on Long Island, while continuing academic interest in the Jewish music of the Middle East, resulting in a collaborative album with the singer and oudist Vida Israel titled Sephardic Hebrew Songs in the Middle East, and a lecture at a Jewish Folklife conference in New Jersey on the subject of, quote, the influence of Arabic music on Jewish Middle Eastern music. He and Eddie the Chief Kochak continued to play together into the 90s. Obadia died May 2004, 14 months into the US military invasion of Iraq. His memorial stone on Long Island reads, "Devoted husband, beloved dad, wise and kind brother, uncle, grandpa, and teacher," and then in all caps, "master musician," which is about as good an epigraph as any one of us could ever hope for. You've all been very kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ian. I think people want to stretch their legs, but Ian's going to be up here if you want to ask any questions. He also has actually some records and CDs available if you're interested in taking home a souvenir. And yeah, thank you so much. Incredible storytelling. Thank you again.